You are 9 years old. The sun has just dipped below the horizon, and the air in your village is thick with the smell of wood smoke and cooking fires. You are sitting on the dirt floor of your home, listening to the quiet hum of evening conversation. Suddenly, the night shatters. The door is kicked off its hinges. Men with dead, hollow eyes flood into the room. They drag you screaming into the dark, away from the only family you have ever known. You are handed a piece of cold, heavy steel, an AK-47 assault rifle. It weighs almost as much as you do. And the man towering over you gives you a choice that no child should ever have to comprehend. Kill or be killed.
Reward the rebel. When they raise us again, then they will kill us. My brother tried to escape, then they kill using panga. They cut his neck.
Did you see it?
I saw. We are not going to meet, but we may meet in heaven, you see. So it is better. I will not talk much. I will start something. Because if I saw my brother once again, I don't.
Welcome back to Echoes of Africa. Today, we are confronting a subject that defies all boundaries of human morality. We are looking at the systematic theft of innocence. When we picture the theater of war, we imagine hardened soldiers. We envision adults making calculated, ideological decisions on a battlefield. But in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the face of conflict in several African nations underwent a horrifying transformation. The combatants became younger, smaller, more vulnerable. Why did children become the ultimate weapon of choice for rebel commanders and warlords? The answer is a devastating cocktail of cold-blooded psychology and deadly technological advancement. In the aftermath of the Cold War, millions of cheap, lightweight automatic weapons flooded the African continent. The Soviet-designed AK-47 changed the mathematics of war. It is incredibly light, requires almost no maintenance, and has very little recoil. An 8-year-old cannot march for miles carrying a heavy World War II-era infantry rifle. But a child can be taught to strip, reassemble, and fire an AK-47 in less than an hour. Once that physical barrier was removed, ruthless commanders realized the terrifying strategic value of youth. Children do not demand a salary. They do not question the political motives of a war. They are deeply impressionable, desperate for a surrogate family, and when pushed past the brink of human endurance, they can be molded into fearless, completely desensitized killing machines. This is the story of how generations were weaponized, from the dense jungles of Uganda to the blood-soaked hills of Rwanda. This is the true story of Africa's child soldiers.
They ordered me to stab a woman 3 times. She didn't die. I shot myself. So I stabbed her 3 times. Others bashed her. Other children, more used to killing, came to the town, stabbing her. First one would stab her, then another would take his place. He left her dead, holding her baby.
To understand the sheer industrialized scale of this horror, we must first look to the dense, unforgiving bush of northern Uganda. In the late 1980s, a man named Joseph Kony rose to power. He led a militant, pseudo-religious cult known as the Lord's Resistance Army, or the LRA. Kony claimed to be a spiritual medium, fighting to establish a state based strictly on the 10 Commandments. Yet, his primary military strategy, the very engine that kept his war machine running for decades, was the mass organized abduction of children. For over 20 years, the LRA terrorized the Acholi people. The fear of night raids was so pervasive, so absolute, that it birthed an entire phenomenon known as the night commuters. Every single evening, as the sun began to set, tens of thousands of children would leave their rural villages. They would walk for miles along dirt roads, migrating into major towns to sleep in the relative safety of hospital floors, church courtyards, and bus stations. They were hiding from the monsters in the dark.
We fear that if you sleep at our home can be abducted by the rebels because our home is far away from town.
They will catch us, then will take us there in the bush. So come here to save our life.
But tens of thousands were not so lucky. When the LRA raided a village, the psychological breaking process of the abducted children was immediate. To ensure that a child could never, ever return home, Kony's commanders forced them to commit the ultimate taboo. Their initiation was often an execution. Children were handed machetes or heavy wooden clubs and ordered to beat a friend, a neighbor, or even their own parents to death. If they hesitated, they were killed on the spot.
I was told killing with a gun is nothing. It's like you haven't killed. For my initiation, they handed me a machete and told me to kill a man. They said if I refused, they would kill me.
It was a calculated, devastating strategy of isolation. If your village believes you are a monster, you have nowhere to run back to. The Lord's resistance army becomes your only family. You learn to march until your feet bleed. You learn to ignore the cries of the dying. You learn that empathy is a weakness that will get you killed. But abduction in the dead of night is not the only way to turn a child into a killer. Sometimes the indoctrination happens in broad daylight, sanctioned by the state itself. In 1994, the small, beautiful nation of Rwanda descended into hell. The Rwandan genocide saw the slaughter of an estimated 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus in the span of just 100 days. While the masterminds of the genocide were elite politicians and military generals, the foot soldiers carrying out the slaughter were overwhelmingly young. They belonged to a youth militia known as the Interahamwe, which translates to those who stand together. How do you convince a teenager to pick up a machete and hack his own schoolteacher to death? You weaponize his despair. In the years leading up to the genocide, Rwanda suffered from massive youth unemployment and deep poverty. The extremist Hutu government specifically targeted these idle, frustrated young men. They gave them a uniform. They gave them a sense of purpose. They gave them power. The indoctrination was fueled by the radio. The infamous RTLM radio station pumped out a continuous stream of hate speech, mixed with popular Congolese music and engaging DJs. It sounded cool. It sounded rebellious. The radio announcers dehumanized the Tutsi minority, referring to them as cockroaches, and framed the impending slaughter not as murder, but as civil work. Teenagers, some as young as 12 or 13, manned the deadly roadblocks across the capital city of Kigali. Intoxicated by propaganda, peer pressure, and often alcohol, these youths committed acts of savagery that defied human comprehension. Neighbors turned on neighbors. The tragedy of the Interahamwe proves a terrifying psychological reality. You do not need to kidnap a child to make them a soldier. If you surround them with an ecosystem of absolute hatred and convince them that their survival depends on the extermination of the other, they will walk into the abyss willingly.
But also when you've lost family and everything, you quickly learn to belong to this group. But to belong to this new group required violence. Violence became the way to show loyalty.
If Uganda utilized religious terror and Rwanda utilized political propaganda, the brutal civil wars of Sierra Leone and Liberia utilized something much more chemically visceral. In the 1990s, rebel groups like the Revolutionary United Front, or RUF, engaged in a terrifying campaign of mass amputations and violence funded entirely by the illicit trade of blood diamonds. To fight this war, they created regiments entirely composed of children, infamously known as the Small Boys Unit. But a child's brain naturally resists the horror of the battlefield. The instinct is to run. The instinct is to cry. So, the rebel commanders bypassed the brain entirely. Before sending them into the line of fire, commanders would make small, shallow incisions on the temples or the arms of young boys. Into these open wounds, they would rub a toxic, highly addictive mixture of cocaine and gunpowder, locally known as brown. The chemical reaction was instantaneous. The narcotics induced wild, violent hallucinations. It stripped away their fear, numbed their physical pain, and completely erased their capacity for empathy. Hallucinating and heavily armed, these children were sent to the front lines as human shields, laughing as the bullets flew past them. And we must not forget the girls.
I thought maybe I was going to die there now.
The narrative of the child soldier often focuses on young boys with rifles, but the nightmare for abducted girls was agonizingly complex. Many girls were trained to fight and kill exactly like the boys. But thousands of others were forced into a terrifying reality of domestic and sexual slavery. They were distributed among rebel commanders as so-called bushwives. They were forced to carry heavy ammunition boxes through the jungle, cook the meals, and endure horrific daily abuse. Their childhoods were violently erased, their bodies turned into spoils of war.
You're 14 now.
Yes.
And Vincent Oti made you his wife. How old were you when he did that? You were
13 years old.
You were 13.
Yes.
Eventually, all wars end. Peace treaties are signed in luxury hotels. Warlords are either killed, exiled, or integrated into the new government. The weapons are surrendered, but for a child soldier, when the guns finally go quiet, the tragedy does not end. In fact, an entirely new war begins, the War of Returning. Imagine being 16 years old. You have spent the last 7 years of your life deep in the bush. You have never sat in a classroom. You do not know how to read a book, but you know the exact sound an artillery shell makes before it hits the earth. You know how to survive. And now, the United Nations peacekeepers strip you of your uniform, take your rifle, and tell you to just go home. But home is a complicated, dangerous place. The communities these children return to are often the very same communities they were forced to raid and terrorize. The stigma is immense. Neighbors look at them not as victims who were manipulated, but as ticking time bombs. Families are terrified of the deeply traumatized, silent strangers who have returned in place of the innocent children they once knew. The psychological scars run deeper than language can convey. These young men and women suffer from severe post-traumatic stress disorder. They endure paralyzing night terrors.
How many people do you think you've killed altogether in the last 3 or 4 years?
I reckon I remember killing 120 people.
And perhaps the most destructive force of all is the crippling, overwhelming guilt for actions they were forced to commit before their moral compass had even fully developed. How do you go back to learning the alphabet when your hands are stained with blood? How do you accept love when you have been taught that violence is the only universal language? As the horrors of the 1990s and early 2000s were broadcast to the world, the international community finally realized that the laws of war had to evolve. In 2002, the Rome Statute officially defined the conscription or enlistment of children under the age of 15 into armed forces as a war crime. 10 years later, in 2012, the International Criminal Court delivered a massive, historic verdict. They convicted a Congolese warlord named Thomas Lubanga Diallo. His crime? Not genocide, not political assassination. He was convicted entirely for the war crime of conscripting and using child soldiers. It was a watershed moment. It sent a clear message to warlords across the globe that the exploitation of youth would no longer be swept under the rug. Massive global efforts were poured into a process known as DDR, disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration. Across the continent, grassroots organizations and dedicated social workers built rehabilitation centers. They gave former child fighters intense psychological counseling. They taught them vocational skills like carpentry, tailoring, or agriculture, giving them an economic alternative to the gun. But we cannot pretend this is a problem of the past. Right now, as you listen to this, the nightmare continues. In the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, dozens of armed militias still roam the mineral-rich forests, actively recruiting vulnerable youth. In the Sahel region of West Africa, extremist insurgencies exploit the deep poverty of rural villages, luring teenagers into their ranks with the promise of money, food, and a motorcycle. As long as there is extreme poverty, and as long as adult men choose to fight wars for resources and power, children will remain the cheapest, most expendable ammunition on the battlefield. Yet, amid this immense, suffocating darkness, there is a profound testament to the absolute invincibility of the human spirit. Because children are not just resilient, they are miraculous. Thousands of former child soldiers have successfully walked through the fire and reclaimed their humanity. Men like Ishmael Bia, who fought in Sierra Leone, survived to write a best-selling memoir and become a globally recognized human rights advocate.
My name is Ishmael Bia. I am an author, and I'm also a human rights activist. By age 13, I had been recruited into the army, and I was fighting as a soldier. When the war finally came to my part of the country, I was 12 years old, and I started running from it. I lost everything. My immediate family was killed in the war, so my mother, father, and 2 brothers.
These survivors have taken to the global stage. They have become lawyers, teachers, musicians, and fathers. They are dedicating their lives to ensuring that no other child has to endure the nightmare they survived. They are living proof that a stolen childhood does not have to dictate a stolen future. They prove that trauma, no matter how deep, can eventually be transformed into a fierce, unyielding purpose.
After I came out of this experience of being a child in war, and I thought to myself, what can I do to give back? What can I do to have people understand the possibilities on the other end, how you can recover from all of that when you're given the right care and support? So I decided to be an example for both people coming out of the struggle, but also people who are doing that work to assist people coming out of that struggle. It's not often you come out of a situation, you meet somebody who has come out of a similar situation like you, and it's doing well and it's standing there. So it gives you hope that you too can do something with yourself.
The story of the child soldier is a dark mirror held up to humanity. It shows us the absolute depths of our cruelty. But the survivors show us the limitless heights of our redemption. Thank you for watching Echoes of Africa. This is a heavy, difficult history to confront, but breaking the silence is the very first step toward ensuring it never happens again. Please share your thoughts on the incredible resilience of these survivors in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so we can continue to uncover the untold stories of this continent together. I will see you in the next one.